Right.
Check my live, I'm about to pass the scope. Here we go, we on a mission. Hoping you will listen. Amplify voices, whipping stories in the kitchen. Each and every third Thursday, round the world we go. Where it all stops, hey, yeah, nobody knows. Hot topics on the mind, show to keep you on your toes. Go on, check my live, man, it's time to pass the scope. Round the world we go. It's time to pass the scope. Round the world we go. Round the world we go. Round the world we go. It's time to pass the scope.
What's going on? It is Pascal EDU After the Bell series. Jumping off of Spring Q 2021. What is up? What is up? We got our normal folks one with us, but we got a very special guest who's going to help mod everything. The dope teacher. What's up, Tori? How you doing?
I'm good. How's everybody doing out there today? How y'all doing?
We are good. We're good. It's Friday.
It's Friday. I got spring break next week. I'm gonna be mad chilling.
Oh, you chilling? Yeah.
Spring break. That's what's up.
Yeah.
Yo, we got our normal folks. We got Valerie holding down the ATL. What's up, Valerie?
Woo, woo, woo. We living the dream. Living the dream.
I don't know. After watching the news, yeah, that ain't no dream. That's a nightmare.
Wow. I was saying the same thing. Like, what they doing out there in Georgia? What?
Wilding out.
I don't know. Then, of course, we got the doctor in the house.
Yo.
What's going on, man?
West Coast. What up, y'all? What up?
Holding down the West Coast, you know how we like to do it. We got everybody involved. Well, I'm not Midwest. I'm really in the center of things down south, but whatever. So, yo, Q. I hear it was blowing up. Is that the case?
Q. You know, one of my what's turning into my favorite part of Q are these Q booms, because these folks have 2 minutes to wrap this tremendous story, and there's been some tremendous folks and to tell their story, and I'm excited today to bring some of the Q boomers on and to have who kind of organizes this whole thing. So it's some really good times, and we got a special guest here, Tori. Tori, you did a Q boom. What was that like? Talk to us.
It was cool. I'm laughing. You said 2 minutes. I definitely went like almost 7. I didn't even know. When I was talking, I was just in the zone. I finished. I was like, yeah, I wrapped that up in about 2 minutes. And I looked at the clock like, oh, my bad, y'all. But it was cool. I mean, I loved it. I feel like it was a good chance for me to kind of tease this nugget of this like session series I want to do in the future. So it was real cool. I enjoyed it. I did it on Imposter Syndrome in the classroom, like as an educator. I've kind of been on this real big kick lately with like mental health as a teacher, anxiety as a teacher, depression as a teacher, and all the things that lead to that and the resources to help you in the classroom with that. So Imposter Syndrome in the classroom was kind of like how I started it off. And yeah, go ahead. You got something?
No, I'm going to say, how you going to do all that in 2 minutes?
Yeah, exactly. I couldn't.
That's heavy.
Yeah, he couldn't. Clearly, he would have failed Toastmasters if he was part of a Toastmasters group.
Oh my gosh, they would have came up there,
Booted you.
Exactly.
Was it Sandman? What's the name of the Apollo? The Sandman would have came out with his little dance.
Like what? I've been trying to dodge that cane, trying to get me. I've been like, but Imposter Syndrome. I was trying to knock it out the way. But no, it was real cool. And I got some real good feedback from it. Some people, hit me up on Twitter and stuff like, hey, it's something I'm dealing with. It's cool to see somebody out there actually talking about it. And that was kind of my thing. I was like, I know I deal with some stress as a teacher, but nobody's talking about the stress. We got all the instruction stuff, the equity stuff, which is great, the technology stuff. But I'm like, teachers are some of the most stressed out people I know, and nobody is really addressing that right now.
Man.
So I'm trying to kind of be that guy right now. Like, hey, I know y'all stressed out. I know y'all have anxiety. I know y'all hate your job sometime. I'm there too. Let me help you get through this,
Yeah.
Oh,
And I
all right.
think, is it Megan Frolic that does The Fire
Hmm.
Within, one of the
Hmm.
EduMatch
Yeah.
publishers? So she's
Hmm.
probably one of the first that I have seen in that space addressing mental health in education amongst the teachers. So she's probably someone, Tori, you want to connect with,
Definitely,
because
bro.
she's doing that work. She is doing that work.
Definitely.
Yeah. I mean, that's incredible. I mean, one, you're right, it is well needed, and it's the reality of our reality as educators. And it needs to be talked about. We need support groups. You know, we need to learn to lean on each other. I mean, I've heard a lot of people speak about it, so I'm very curious and anxious, actually. Shouldn't use the word anxious. You know, I'm looking forward, to checking out, what you've got to say on that. We definitely have to invite you back when we got a whole lot of time to really break that apart. So
Oh yeah.
that's cool. That's cool. That's
Thank you.
cool.
Thank you.
So Q Boom was the week leading up to what's happening right now. Is that correct?
Yeah. So last weekend they did their boom. It was Saturday, right? Right, Tori? Folks did their boom
It was
and
on Friday evening, I think.
Friday evening. Friday. Hmm.
Okay.
And
Okay.
and Abby will be able to talk to us more about that.
Hmm.
All right. Yeah, we're gonna bring some folks on, to give us the lowdown of what went down with Q. I'm gonna be honest with you. Growing up in the ed tech space, I heard the word Q. It was just a West Coast thing. And us folks in Texas, or when I was in New Jersey, is when I first heard about it. I was like, "What is Q?" I need to find out what is Q. How can I be down? I mean, there's spring Q, there's fall Q, there's cue ball. I'm sorry, I'm just making jokes now.
Cue ball.
Uh, but from the stuff I've seen, it's been fire, year after year, and now we've taken it virtual. I hear it was also hot as well. So we're gonna bring some folks on to talk to us about it. You know how we do, y'all. We're just gonna bounce them in. Here we go. Boom, boom, boom.
Boom.
Anybody else in the background? Okay, that's it. That's it for
It's a
right
good
now.
looking group.
And maybe we
Hey,
can start
y'all.
with Abby. Abby can get us started about, the her involvement with Q Boom, and then I know we said Ella would go first, but maybe Abby can go first, since we kind of started that way anyways, and maybe Abby can start to talk to us about what, the whole
Oh wait,
Q Boom process. Oh, go ahead.
there's more. I just had to add Matisse in there.
Yo, there's more.
Oh man,
All right,
this
my
like a
bad.
Kendrick jump on the track right here.
All right, Abby, break it down for us, please.
Okay, I've been with Q Booms now for 2 years. I didn't start it, but each boomer gets 3 minutes to lay down their tracks of a story, a lesson, something that is meaningful to them. And ever since I've been part of it, I've really wanted to find the, Q members in California and Nevada and now beyond. We had someone from Massachusetts and Texas actually this time around who deserve some stage time. That's why I lean pretty heavily on our OVA fam, because y'all need to drop your 3 minutes.
OVA. Okay, so all right now since you own this since you own the spot, some folks don't know about OVA. So you want to break it down for us as well?
Oh, how much time you got? Oh no. OVA. Okay. OVA stands for Our Voice Alliance, and it is near and dear to, I think, everyone on this screen right now. And it's a program that's meant to develop educators of color, so that they take on more of the stage in keynotes and in spotlight speaking, because we've got a lot to say and a lot to share, and we haven't been given the space.
And Abby, can you talk a little bit about like how important it is for voices to be represented in Q Boom? I know you talk about that a lot.
Well, when is diversity bad? I don't know. I
Mm.
think, I've held this belief for a long time, and these are not my words, so I've stolen them, lifted them with love. But in education particularly, I think, can scaffold vulnerability one story at a time. And if the stories are the same from similar people who only represent certain students, we're going to lose whole communities of kids and whole communities of educators. And I know too many great educators who are burning out or phasing out because of that. And far too many students who are feeling on the fringes because they don't see any adults in their spaces who look like them, who can connect with them culturally. I mean, I've never had a Filipino teacher. So I know that's a question that's been popping around social media right now. When's the first time you had a teacher who represented you? So I think in terms of Q Boom too, I think we represent teachers out there who want to see us on the stage, who want to believe, they have a voice in this and a stake in this, that they can add, their lessons and their culture and their voices to this. So I think Ella's one of the few Filipinos that have come onto the Q Boom stage, and I hope there's 20 more coming up.
Cool. So who else did a Q Boom, that's on the screen right now?
Yeah, so I think Ella, maybe you want to talk about, because when you had me, yeah, you talked to me about your kind of your story, and I thought it was really like the whole story was like captivating me because my folks are immigrants as well, and your story really resonated with me.
Yeah. Oh, hi everyone. Thanks for having
Hey.
me. Yeah, it's funny. Like, Tatul and I have had like these conversations, like these Voxer conversations about just growing up in the United States and just being an immigrant student in that experience. And there were so many parallels, and I didn't realize like how many people have had this experience, but we don't talk about it. Right, especially in our professional setting, it just kind of gets swept to the side. And the more conversations I had with Tatul and with other teachers of color who are immigrants or children of immigrants, I realized that this is a very common story,
Mm-hmm.
and it's not heard enough. And I think I ended up just wanting to tell it for Q Boom. It wasn't my original story, but I actually wrote a paper about it just a couple weeks before, and then I thought, oh, this is it. This is what I got to tell people. And then that week, the violence in Atlanta happened, and I just thought, or was it Atlanta? It was somewhere in Georgia. And I just thought, okay, like it just it was very timely to talk about the experience.
So maybe talk a little bit about kind of where you started, because I know you said your parents initially moved to Maryland and that experience, and moving to LA and
Yeah.
how that transition was. And
Oh yeah, I'm about to recite my Q Boom right now if you ask me to go there. And I went over 3 minutes, I promise you. It was originally like 8 minutes. I'm like, Abby, I don't know how I'm going to do this. But basically, I'll try to give you the Cliff Notes version of it. But yeah, I came here with my family when I was almost 4 years old, and my mom just had her baby. Like after we landed, she had her baby basically. And she was busy taking care of my newborn sister. My dad was working 2 jobs. He was like, running a hot dog cart by day and bussing tables at night. It's like the immigrant story. He's working his tail off. But like my parents weren't positioned to send me to preschool or kindergarten. So in my Q Boom, I talk about how I attended romper room. And growing up watching these shows, I didn't get out of the house. So whiteness is centered in everything that we watch. Not so much now. I mean, still now, but it's not as much as before. But I just saw nothing but white kids on TV. And so when I was finally ready to go to first grade, I kind of had it in my mind that I'd be going to school with a bunch of white kids. I'm like, oh, if everyone is Black and Korean, fine. But it was just kind of like, oh, here's another thing I have to prepare myself for, because I had just kind of, prepared myself to be around these people who don't look like me. And I'm in a different environment where they don't quite look like me, but at least I kind of blend in. But also being an Asian American and being in schools where the teachers were, I think they were all white women. I was invisible because they didn't quite know what to make of me. I was the quiet student. I was well behaved. I was good. I had a teacher. It wasn't my first grade teacher, but another teacher. She mocked my accent. That shuts kids down. That shuts kids down. And it's so bad for your identity formation. And like it gives you this shame about who you are and where you come from, and you downplay it all your life. And so basically at the end of my boom, I talk about how it's so important to see our kids, to value all our cultures, say our names, because I had teachers who like never said my name. That romper room lady never said my name. I'm still bitter about it. And I had a 5th grade teacher who would rename all the Asian kids. I didn't mention it in the chat. He would rename the kids, and I was so afraid he would change my name. But you know, I didn't realize my name was pretty Western, but I was afraid he was going to change my name. So he's like this girl named her name was Lan. She was from Vietnam, and he called her Lana. And there's a girl named Beach. He named her B. And then there was another girl, I forgot, her name was Twee, but he renamed her Jenny. And he would rename all the Asian girls in my class. And that stuck with me. I was like, I officially hated him. Like I don't hate very much, but I officially hated him. And he just brought, you know, it just conveys this message that, oh, wow, your culture is, you know, it is some colonizer BS. You know, my culture was substandard in his hierarchy. And so what we do in our classrooms is really, really powerful. We send powerful messages to our students with what we say and what we don't say. And not acknowledging who we are and letting people know that our cultures are just as valuable as anyone else's. I can go on. I'm going to stop right here.
Now that's real talk, Ella. You know, you think about, like you said, the student that maybe at home is very proud of their culture and heritage. And then when they come to school, there's another world where they have to hide and mask that culture and heritage. And so what's going on in their mind, you know, is what we celebrate at home truly important, or is this a figment of my parents' imagination? And then when I go out in society, do I need to be someone else? You know, and I remember growing up in Miami, Florida, where, you know, we grew up in the 80s where being Haitian was like the talk of the town. Oh, Haitians eat cat and all of that. And it wasn't cool until the Fugees came out. And so instead of being Haitian, you needed to pass for Jamaican or Bahamian. And so when you think about what that meant and what that does to a child, I think it is, like you said, damaging. And for a teacher to just decide he's going to rename you, you know, nowadays, I think some kids will speak up, you know, because kids are just different nowadays. So some kids aren't going to take, my name is Twee. No, you're going to say, my name is Twee, not to name me Jenny. Like, where did you get Jenny from? You know, how is that even a thing? But, you know, that's damaging. That's damaging indeed.
Yeah. And when you bring up about the food, that just, you know, reminds me of, you know, like when we talk about Asian cultures, like people always make fun of, oh, you eat dog, you eat cat, or whatever it is. And then until there's someone famous in media or entertainment, then we become acceptable. Or eating with your hands is so provincial, but like now, like with foodies, it's trendy, you know. It's just interesting.
Yeah, Val, you said something interesting. Like at home, your culture is validated, and you feel good when you're with your peoples. But then when you go to school, it's a whole different situation. And as kids, I mean, you don't know how to really navigate that. And if the adults aren't there to help you navigate it, it's really damaging to your, you know, your self-esteem and your identity. And you start to identify with white facing things instead of identifying with your own culture. So that's it's interesting.
And I just want to add, like that whole thing about our culture being downplayed and just not being seen as relevant. You know, well, I'll speak for myself. Like I internalized that invisibility, and so for a very long time, I just kind of just accepted that maybe I'm just not good enough. You know, I didn't know any better. Like it wasn't until, you know, until I became educated and learned, like, hey, what is this? No, this is BS. And it wasn't until then that I really started to like just explore my culture and learn about my culture. And even as a Filipino American, like we have no history here. Like I'm still trying to learn my history. You know, I'm still picking up books and trying to learn what my history is. As a matter of fact, I remember Michelle had asked me about some Filipino Americans. We were talking about history units, and I was like, oh my gosh, I'm so embarrassed. I don't know. And so our history is erased. And that erasure, that invisibility, again, very, very damaging. Again, teachers have the power to reverse that starting now.
You know, I've been there as well, but not knowing my history fully. I was talking to somebody recently, and I was like, I didn't learn about Hidden Figures until Disney dropped the movie. Like the fact that these very important women contributed to such an important mission in history, and I didn't learn about them until Disney dropped the movie. It's like, why? But I had been knowing about everybody else. Like from day one, I knew about every single person else that was involved in any type of space mission, but not the main women who made that possible for everybody.
Right.
So I'm here with you. I feel ashamed sometimes too for not knowing my history, but it's not really readily available as everyone else's.
Yeah, I've asked that question often. I speak to my parents, and my grandparents alive. It was very important that I ask questions constantly about what's going on, and I noticed that through the years, as a kid, yes, I was underneath them to understand that history, to hear those stories. But as a parent myself, because I'm trying to get to the point where I don't want my kids to go through what I had to go through. I forget to go back and tell those stories, right? So I find this a very exciting time for me because you're right. I haven't dug enough into my history, but as I'm sharing those opportunities and stories with my kids. And it's been an amazing experience because now their eyes are open, but they're also being equipped to recognize what's really going on and learning how to find their voice to be able to talk about those situations. Just real quick example, Black Wall Street, the Tulsa Massacre. That's a story that's not in our history books, right? Folks don't know about it. I didn't learn about it till later on, but we actually got a chance to visit Greenwood, a couple of weeks ago, and for them to know the story, but then to live the story by going to the actual place was huge, and I saw large changes in my kids. But it came from now I'm thirsty to understand my history, to learn my history, and I'll make a confession. My aunt's mom was one of those mathematicians. She was a human computer, so I kind of knew the story. Never shared it. I'm terrible. I'm sorry.
That's hilarious, Brian. Michelle, why don't you hop in here? Tell us your perspective. What was your boom about? What were you talking about?
I hope y'all are well tonight. I had a great time with Q Boom. I didn't know what to expect. It was my first time being a part of it, but my boom was near and dear to my heart, and it was about the do not use list. I come from the medical field as a clinical microbiologist, and so in medicine, we have a list of words that our accrediting bodies have said, you cannot use these words, you can't use these abbreviations, you can't use certain markings because people die when you do that. And thinking about that as an educator and as a person who works with young people, we have words that we use to them that we shouldn't use because people die. We cause harm when we use those words. And I work with young girls a lot, not as much now because we're still lightweight on lockdown. But when I talk to Black girls, they can give you a list of words that they hear in their schools that is disgusting. And so I shared that list. And I think, now, Abby, you can tell me if I'm wrong, but I think I was real close to 3 minutes. I think I stayed real close to 3 minutes. So I didn't get to go in depth as much as I would have loved to if I'd have had like 100 minutes. But within that little bit of time, the list involves stuff like low, right? Slow. You got a bad attitude, things like that we know please don't say that about our girls or about our boys or about anybody. But other people think it's okay because it has been put out like that for many years. You have heard teachers, I mean, you got a teacher renaming a child, calling them Jenny, for crying out loud. So we have set this standard that it is okay for you, authoritarian, right, person in authority, for you to speak however you want over a child. And we're just going to all accept it. But the whole talk was really about choosing some different words, right? Let's get an acceptable word list, right? Why don't you call this person brilliant? Call that person a leader if you want to, but saying she's bossy, she's rude, she's mean, you know, stuff like that, we've got to stop doing that. And it's really bad with Black girls, really bad. I know it. I've seen it even in my short time in K-12. I've had teachers who don't look like us talk to me about a girl, calling her names. And I'm like, don't ever say that again about a Black girl. Don't say it about anybody, but definitely stop saying that about our girls. Because see, I'm just going to have to take whatever hit I get for coming at you like that because I'm tired of it. So that was really what the talk was about, but it was real quick. 3 minutes is not a long enough time, but I feel like, you know, people gave me some good feedback on just addressing the importance of words and how we use them with young people.
There's power in the tongue, power in the tongue. And those words can either uplift or they can kill. And when you think about truly what you're saying, Michelle, about just discipline, you know, a lot of times these kids that we see coming through the office doors, you know, and I see that as an administrator with some of our Black boys before they can come in. It's like, here they go. It's like people are already fishing for something. And so, of course, they're like, Miss Lewis, go get them. And I'm like, okay, here we go. So I have to close my door. And I said, don't you be out here giving these folks something to say negative about you. And I have to give them that empowering talk because on the other side of the door, the eyes are watching and already creating that narrative, as you say, and telling that story. And sometimes those kids want to be seen, but they just want to be seen in a different way, not being seen how you see others and those stereotypes that have been the narrative. So you're absolutely right. You know, calling girls grown and look at how they dressed and all of that. It's damaging. It is.
Yeah, I'm just thinking about all the conversations that we have during team meetings, department meetings. You talk about students, and it's the same students. It's the same students we talk about. And if you close your eyes, you can see the student. If it's a little Black boy or a little Black girl, we have these things to say about them, and the kids hear it. We say them out loud. The kids hear it. It gets internalized, and it furthers the message, that deficit message. And like you said, Valerie, there's no empowerment in that, and it further ingrains in their brain that they can't succeed in this environment. And I'm not sure how much we think about our words, but how much it breaks down our kids, and how if we're gonna change the narrative about our kids, we need to change what we say about them. So that's so powerful, Michelle.
I just wanted to say one more thing about that. I have a lot of conversations with people who really don't understand our children. And when I say our children, I'm going to extend it to Black and brown kids. Our communities are different. Our homes are different. The way we're raised, they're just different than what society thinks they know about us. And one thing that I have to remind them is that even though you're telling me, well, I don't say this to them, trust me, you say it with your actions, right? And so you're calling them low. I cannot stand that. Stop calling these kids low. If they haven't met the level, then just say, these are, I'm working with them to get them at level. There's nothing wrong with that. But when you call them low, or when you call them the slow group, you treat them like they're low. You treat them like they're slow. You don't have any expectations for them, and they know it. And so I'm a little different because I expect for you to be operating up here. So when you come to my class, and I never realized this until I had to submit a video to my leadership, and I listened to my kids speak, they will tell you, I am brilliant. I'm intelligent. I'm a mathematician. They say that stuff out their mouths, because that's what they're getting from our school, what do you call it, affirmation, and just from our conversation. Math is hard, but math is something you can figure out. It's figure outable. You can do this. You're a mathematician. And they're like, yeah. And so now they say that. This is how I know what our kids want to be called, because I hear them say it out of their own mouths. So I think words are more powerful. And I know some people know how powerful they are. They just don't know that we're onto them yet. I see what you're doing, and you will stop it.
Dude, I'm mad that I didn't catch these live.
Absolutely.
I'm real mad. Is there a way to access the videos? I haven't just everyone, but is there a way for people to be able to go back and gain access to? I know Michelle was the only one that stayed, on time. But look, I know. But is there a way? I guess that's the question. Is there a way for us to go back and view these, no matter what the time limit was?
Only if you are an attendee at Spring Q, and you have access until March 31st.
Okay. Can I get the bootleg version? I'm sorry, just asking.
The bootleg version.
It's Friday, y'all. I'm in that mood.
Well, they put some of them up on YouTube. I remember, Abby, the one that we did with Leticia, that whole section, that whole piece is on YouTube. Are they planning on doing that again for this variety?
I think they switched over to Vimeo for some reason.
Okay.
But I would check their Facebook page. Some of the live videos are still up.
I guess I'm asking because what you're saying, what all of you have shared thus far, is too powerful just to stay with one audience. People are feeling, what you're saying right now, but more people need to be exposed to what's happening. And what we do here at Pasco BDU is we try to, do whatever we can to amplify those voices and those stories, in those conferences to, create an equitable reach, so to speak, when it comes to some of these conferences. So I'm feeling everything y'all saying. I'm getting fired up, I'm getting excited, but I'm also feeling, everything that's going on with these stories, and I just gotta share them. Find some way to share them. We'll talk about that later on. Tua, who we got next?
Leticia, you didn't do a boom this time. I think you had you're doing so many sessions. You can talk about the sessions you were associated with Q. If there's something else you want to talk about, because you're always out there killing people with your content. So talk to us about some of the stuff that you got going on.
Yeah. So remember, we did our boom together in 2019. So no, this year, I was just finishing up one before I came here. But I got to present, of course, with Equity in Action. We had our session where we were talking about welcoming spaces. Actually, we ended up veering off course,
yeah, we did.
right? It very we just had these conversations because we recognized what was happening at that time, and we actually centered Sue this time, right? And Asian voices. So that was exciting. So definitely try to catch that. That was last Friday. Actually, that was at the same time as the Q Booms. So we weren't even there to support Tori and Ella and Michelle, but I will do it on the recording. So we were there with you in spirit. And then the following day, last Saturday, our Equity and Access Learning Network. So Abby and I are part of that. So we actually had a session with the team where we went into breakout rooms. So my session, or the one that I facilitated, was moving from allyship to co-conspirator. That was interesting. And Abby was there for that. Thank you for the support.
Can you talk about that a little bit? What that session was about? Because that's my jam. What was that about?
I know, and I tried to get you there.
I know. Kids.
just I went around and just asked participants to share what they thought those two words were. I wanted to recognize where people were at that time in that moment for them and their understanding. And then, someone volunteered an example, what they had experienced and how they were trying to help students feel welcomed, more specifically with our Black and Brown students. So we went through and we challenged what she was doing by asking questions to say, like, would you have done this if this student was white? Or what would you have done differently if this were the case? Or, the participant shared how she wanted to partner this Black student with another Black student. And so we asked her, like, what were the things that she took into account? Was it just skin color? Or did you go above and beyond and try to learn about that student to then place her with someone who also shared similar experiences? So we talked about that as well. And then there was someone who was there that asked, they wanted more understanding about co-conspirator because they were connecting it to the word like bystander or upstander. What was it, Abby? Like they were trying to connect it to an upstander because they connected to the Holocaust, right? And so they wanted to understand, because when they heard conspirator, they took it as someone who like was on the sidelines, right? And they were part of the problem. And so we tried to explore like what a co-conspirator does. Like being an ally, yeah, you get to put up your black box on Twitter and you get to say, that I stand with Black and Brown. I get to say that, hey, I support Asians and want to stop the hate and all those things. But then what are you doing after that? And so this is where like being a co-conspirator, and we really talked about like sacrificing your privilege, like recognizing that you have this privilege that you did nothing to get it and you're benefiting from it. And now how are you going to help marginalized groups and stand up to say like, hey, that policy that we're talking about at our school right now, that's wrong. No. How are you going to push back? How are you going to say, oh, I'm being invited again to speak and share my voice? No, it's time for us to put these marginalized voices that probably have more to share than I do, to have them come to the forefront and really, like, again, what are you willing to give up that you've been benefiting from so that way others can instead? And so it was interesting. We had 30 minutes or so, and just that I was exhausted after. We did a debrief, and it was like, because like I said, my session was ally versus co-conspirator. We had another session that was like, I'm woke, now what?
Wow.
Yeah, we had another session that looked at when we look at our SPED students and the labels that come with them in terms of being Black and Brown students and how we're mislabeling students. Going back to what you said, Michelle, about like labeling students as low and incompetent and unable to do things. So that was another session as well. Yeah, so those were like my two like deep ones, and they were the early hitters. And then what was it? Yesterday I did one on using, building curiosity and inquiry in your class using Wonderopolis. Today I had 10 minutes. They wanted me to reprise my keynote from QLA, and I was like, I'm not in that space right now. I can't. So instead I did a whole reflection thing. I walked teachers through like reflecting on the past year to highlight those successes. Like I asked them to share a success, share a quote that they heard time and time again, share an event that they thought was like amazing, a goal that they have to carry into next year based off of, especially because this year, we did a lot of things differently. And what's one of those things that they had never done before that they did for this season and that they want to take into the next school year. So just doing a kind of reflection thing for 10 minutes, give them some tools that they can do with their students as well. Yeah.
Well, Leticia, you talked about sacrificing privilege. So I want to bounce this over to Abby and Tori. For those that are watching that look like us in this moment, that don't have a platform or a stage in which they might be able to amplify their voice, what might you say to those that may need to sacrifice their privilege and encourage those that may not get that space to step out a little bit more? What would you speak to that?
I mean, I was blessed to start off my whole thing with like co-presenting with people who are already kind of out there, and that's kind of how I got my name out there. And I mean, if people have seen me speak before, they'll know that I've always been really low key until I got fired up about this last year. And once I started seeing people were willing to listen to me, or better yet, on my site, people don't really listen to me, which is fine. I don't care. It's whatever to me. But I was like, all right, I'm not going to stress about this site, because I know if I keep speaking at these Q events, it's going to be more widespread, you know? And I think virtually it's been great, because I'm like, if you didn't come to my session, it's all good. I recorded it. It's going to be on your feed anyway. So I'm kind of like going with the thing of the platform out here virtually, I think is more widespread than when we were speaking in person, because not everybody could afford the time to go to these conferences, and stretching it out from like 3 days to 10 days makes it easier. And I've had people in my district where I'm like, hey, I just spoke my Q Boom that was possibly recorded. I just sent it to my superintendent. I was like, well, he got it. I don't know if he's going to watch it or not, but it's out there. I don't care. And he replied like, man, that was amazing. I'm glad you do that. So that's kind of how I am. I kind of take, no matter how small my platform is, and just throw it out there to everybody. And I encourage other people to do the same. I know it's kind of scary because there's not that many people who look like us out there speaking right now. But when you get that moment, no matter how small it is, find you a network, you know, your PLN, and just get it out there, get it spread out there. You'll find somebody who's willing to listen more. So, I mean, I hope that answered your question.
Yes, Abby, I want you to add to that if you have something that you'd like to tag on.
Well, I'm going to flip it a little. I'm going to tie it back to imposter syndrome, Tori's message. And that's real. Imposter syndrome is very real, especially if we don't see other people, even in the spaces, right? Not alone presenting, but in the spaces of conferences. If I don't see people like me, why would I feel like my voice is even going to matter to these people? So the way I'm going to flip it though, and one strategy that we've been using, Valerie's son and I have been coordinating this past time around for Q Boom, is the nomination system. So those of you who did Q Booms this year, we're going to reach out to you for the next time around and say, who do you believe's voice needs to be on this stage? Who might not even believe that they believe, or believe that they need to be on the stage. And we offer support with that too. I think it's really critical that when we have high expectations of people, that we offer them high support also. So if you're unsure, we're gonna be there the entire time. I'll sit with you. We'll talk through what message you want to deliver, how to deliver it. I'll practice with you. Whatever you need to get to that stage and feel confident, because that's part of it too. How are we lifting up other people, and how are we supporting them to get to that confident spot, so that the next time around they don't need us and they can lift someone else up.
That's something I shed light on in my Q Boom. I was looking at the phrase when I was researching, like, people are always like, oh, you have something to offer. And, you know, people are kind of thinking like, okay, I have something to offer. Like maybe I'm really good at cooking, or maybe I'm good at photography, but I want to flip it and kind of emphasize the word you. Like, no, you have something to offer. Not that you have something to offer, but you individually have something to offer. And I always thought, you know, I don't really focus too much on academics, because I started off by teaching children who deal with emotional trauma and behavioral, you know, disturbances. So my class has always been about good vibes only, mental health, keeping everybody happy, mindfulness. And I'm like, that's something I have to offer. That's experience I have, you know. I can go out there and talk about keeping your classroom, you know, like in a good mood, putting up the right aesthetics to keep everybody calm. And it's like, so each teacher has their own thing. We have a teacher on my campus. I went to go check his classroom the other day. He has like a whole 6 computer setup for his virtual learning. And I'm like, wow, that's crazy. That's something that he has to offer. He can always do something and talk about how he made his setup. So that's kind of how I look at it when encouraging people. It's like when they're like, no, I don't know, I don't have nothing to offer. I'm like, no, you do, because they hired you for a reason. They didn't interview only you and say that's it. They chose you out of a bunch of different applicants. So obviously you bring something to the table. So bring it, show us.
Absolutely. And Ella and Michelle, I wanted to say, so segueing into, so now that the individuals see people that look like them on stage, Abby mentioned the nomination system. There's still that fear of, I don't know what I should speak about, although everyone has an experience and that story can be amplified. How do you get someone now to craft that story? So you guys had to get on stage. How do they know how to put this together in a way that's deliverable? I have something, but I don't know how to really format it. I don't really know how to organize it. I don't know how to put it out there. So Ella and Michelle, speak to us about that process for you and what worked.
So the process that worked for me was I literally had to outline it. And first I started with a brain dump. I just dumped it all on a doc, and then I just had to break it up into 3 acts because we're given 9 slides to work with. So I'm like, okay, I went with super easy math. I'm like 9 divided by, I have to give each slide like 20 seconds or 30 seconds. I forget what. I obviously didn't do that. But just outlining it, and then I just reaching out to Abby and Valerie. I'm like, you all offered coaching, I'll take it, because if you're gonna offer me support, I will take it. I'm not gonna say no to it. And I had just amazing support, and then just being able to talk it through and practice it. And truth be told, the first time I tried to practice my finished product, I broke down into tears. I'm like, whoa, I was not expecting this. But it was cathartic. And then I heard that this is the OVA experience, so I got a little taste of that. But it was the first time I had told my story. I've had this conversation, I guess semi-privately, but I had never brought it to the public before. So I had to kind of go through it a couple times without choking up. And then by the time it got to the real thing, I was fired up. Like, okay, I'm ready to tell the story, and I'm ready to tell it again and again and again. But really just having to come to terms with my experience and accepting it and learning from it, and then hopefully sharing it with others so that they can learn from my experience, from whatever perspective, as a student, as a teacher, as a fellow immigrant, as someone, as a white educator. And I have to be honest, there's a part of me that was a little nervous. I had practiced with Tatul, and I said, he said, oh yeah, this really resonates with me, being an immigrant. I'm like, okay, great. But how will this sound to others? I was worried about that. Right. And then Tatul's like, you don't got to worry how this sounds to others. It's your story. And I just hung on to that. I'm like, it is my story. This is my story. I'm going to share it. No one can take that away from me. It's my experience, and this is what it is. And we all have a story to tell. And we may have similar stories, but everyone will tell it differently. And I think that's what I would tell to anyone I nominate. Like, you've got a story, and it's yours. It may draw parallels with someone else's experience, but it is your story. And I will be here to support you in sharing it because it's worth telling.
Love that.
Michelle.
I think my biggest struggle probably wasn't organization. I write. I love writing. And so to me, I could just sit down and figure out the structure of a thing. How much time do I have? Do I want pictures? I feel like that was very natural. My big struggle is my topic, because I feel like what I love and what I'm passionate about causes people to literally hate me. And so I struggle there. Like, how much do I really want to say? Because I'm not really being truthful or authentic to myself if I don't talk about the matters of my heart. So that was the big fight for me, not really organizing it. I saw their emails like, do you want help with this? And I was like, I really wanted to sound like me. And so I struggle sometimes with asking for people's input. I will make examples or samples of my work and share it. But I really, when I'm going through that process of planning and writing it out, I don't really ask for people's help because I want it to represent me completely. But I definitely struggle with the information that I'm going to share. Yeah, that's a real struggle bus for me.
Yeah, I get that, Michelle. I think I'm the same way, asking people for help and support, but knowing kind of where you want it to go, and being able to open up and get that. And Leticia, I wanna ask, I want to kind of throw this question to you, like this idea of supporting people of color, and supporting folks in their own journey, and maybe talk about what type of supports you received that was beneficial to kind of you moving along this journey and where you're at today.
I will say that really what got me into presenting and sharing what I was doing in my class is seeing others do it. And sorry to say, but like going to those sessions that weren't the best. And I was like, yo, I could do this. And I have things to share. Now, I will say when I first started teaching, my first year, I remember our CRT, who's like the curriculum resource teacher. She came to me and they had like our mini district PD, and she said, "Oh, I want you to have a session." And so I froze, and I actually called in sick and didn't show up because I was like beside myself. So I'm like, I'm a first year teacher. What am I doing that these people are going to want to listen to? And I was already at a school where I felt like even in our staff meetings and stuff, when I would try to speak up, like no one wanted to hear me say anything because I didn't feel really had to do with my race, as opposed to like because I was young. Like I was just 22 and started teaching. And so I felt like frightened. So that first experience I called in sick. And what was crazy because she knew it. So then the next day, like she called me in and we sat down and we talked about it. And then she had me talk about what I could have shared. And she was like, you had all the tools. You already had it. Like, these are great and amazing. So she started asking me to present at staff meetings. And then again, going to conferences, like I said, I went to like some that I felt weren't the best and I wasn't benefiting from it. But as I was sitting there, I was like, oh, they could have done this. Like I was being that teacher, right? Where like, oh, they could have shared this spot, or they, could have done this over here. And so then that's what got me really excited about like, yo, I could do this. Now that was just presenting. That's just like taking what I'm doing in my class, using my students' voices. And I would tell my students that like, I'm going to use this when I talk about X, Y, and Z, what we're doing in our class, and I'm going to bring your voice to shine. Right. And so my students would be excited. They're like, oh, when are you going to another conference? Because they knew that I was going to share their work to talk about what we were doing in class. Now, when it came to keynoting, that was a whole nother thing. And had it not been for you, Tool, like pushing me, right? Pushing, dragging, threatening, did all the things that you did to get me into OVA. And I can hear my husband over here laughing because he watched me go through that whole process. Like when Tool said it, we were actually at Spring Q, I think 2018. And he was like, yo, I'm about to sign you up for OVA. And I was like, what is this? What are you doing? What are you doing? And I remember standing next to him and I was like, no. And he was on his phone. And I was like, what are you talking about? And he was like, just calm down. So he's like filling this out and he's asking me questions. So how long you been doing this? Yeah. Wait, didn't we do? Yeah. And then I was like, what did you just do? And he was like, oh, it's this thing. You're going to love it. That's what he told me. It's this thing. You're going to love it. So, so I was like, no. So then he was like, you're going to get an email. Just be ready for it. And I did. And I was like, what is this? I waited to the last day to fill out that application. I remember like I had to do the video and all those things. And my husband was like, you better do it. And what was cool is because I could say in there, like, there have been times, right? I told you when I first started teaching, they wanted me to present. Even as recent as maybe 2 years before that, I was invited to speak at Azusa for one of their teacher things. I turned it down, and they had asked me twice, 2 years in a row. And I did. I would like freeze up. And like many of you have said, like, what do I have to say that's going to make them listen to me? I felt like I already had all my energy to push against that idea by presenting. Like, I already know that going to these big conferences, going to TCEA, going to FETC, going to ISTE, that I'm going to be in this space that's predominantly, dominated by white faces, by white voices. That's where my energy is. I have to fight to function in those spaces. I don't have time to do that for keynotes and speak for 20 minutes. What the hell do I have to say that they're going to listen to? And still be impactful. That's my thing. At least if I can reach one person, my work is done. I'm like, Lord, just give me that and I will make it through. So I already had turned down. So I was able to, OVA allowed me to be honest about that. And I was able to share that on the application. And then again, even days leading up to OVA to get on that flight, the tool was on the phone with me. My husband, same thing. You're going to get on that flight. You're going to do. I had a migraine the entire time. Abby knows. Abby saw me. Oh my gosh. It was it was such an experience. But even that, and what was crazier is that when we had that first dinner, everybody talked about how they did not want to be there. They weren't sure if they belonged there. Everyone was feeling the same way I was. And I was like, yo, so we about to do this. And I was still calling Tatul on the phone, being like, I think you made a mistake. And he was like, yo, just, you gonna knock it out of the park. Tatul does what he says. And he was like, you got it. Click. He was on his way up to a wedding in San Francisco or something, right? So he was like, I'm gonna be with the family. You can do it. But having OVA, everyone there, we were all supportive. Jane did a phenomenal job how it was set up, partnering us with Sarah was there as my coach. And that truly, right when we finished OVA, then Abby, brilliant idea, what she wanted. She was like, you're going to do a Q boom. What? But thank God I had gone through OVA. Because she was like, just take what you just did. I'm like, that was 5 minutes. You're talking about 3 minutes, right? So really, having the support of others, continues. Because, recently I was just asked to present for QLA, be their keynote speaker. And this time around, I will honestly say, I was ready. And I just went into prayer. People were like, oh, what are you going to talk about? And I was like, I'm in prayer about that. I did. I honestly stayed in prayer. A couple of days before, I was like, okay, it's coming to me now. God's talking to me, and I did all my writing out. I felt a lot better about that, and it truly was because of people like Abby and Tatul and OVA and Brian. Every time I see him at a conference, he's like, I'm stepping back so that way people like you can come up. And I'm like, what are you talking about? And he's like, no, it's coming. I feel like people are always speaking into my life, even when I think I'm not ready. And then it comes to fruition. And I'm just thankful for that.
And that's the power of connection. Because Brian, I think you nominated me for OVA and I nominated Michelle. So just looking at how this whole thing comes back full circle, and Tatul nominating Leticia. And Ella, who did you get nominated by?
That guy, the bully right there.
The bully, Tatul.
Bully.
Okay.
Yes.
And Abby.
Bully. Tori, you're next. Tori's next.
Right.
I got nominated by
Tatul
Dee
is a bully.
and Ari.
And Ari. Yeah. That's what's up.
Tatul,
Brian, go ahead.
Name, bully, man. You're a bully.
I'm actually really.
Stop it.
I think pride is an appropriate term, just to see the growth, of OVA, because it was an idea when we began. I don't think we were live when I said I'm the OG in cohort 1, but to see it blossom the way that it is, but also to see the folks that are now involved catch fire. For us in cohort 1, many of us had already done some keynote work, and we used that experience to really fine tune our stories, and it scared us to death, But the way that we started was doing those short messages, ignites. Many of us had done ignites, like at ISTE or Q Booms, those short ones. And those are actually more difficult than when you do have 20 to 45 minutes to actually spill it all out. So I'm actually stupid excited, to see to see what you guys are about to do, with this. I feel bad that I'm not as involved as I used to be. I say I have
Brian, I
15? It's
got
okay.
you. You about to get involved, bro. I got you. I got you. I got you.
Well, I'm
I sent you and Valerie a message last week. I got you guys.
okay. Well, I'm definitely be excited to amplify what you guys have going on, and the story that you have to tell. I'm really excited about what you're sharing tonight as well. I've got an idea though. I just have an idea, but I'll talk to you Tutul first because I know you've got something
He's the
in the works
bully.
as well. Yeah, right. Yeah, let me speak to the bully first, and I want to make sure that we don't overlap. But the more opportunities to share, the better, right?
Yep.
Cool. All right. So, what we got next coming on with Q? Q's not over, right?
Tomorrow, I think, is the last day.
Tomorrow's the last day. Are you sad? Because nobody's smiling when you said that.
Well, I'm just excited that we got to hear from the folks who are on this panel, and that the stories that are out there aren't just the typical whitewashed stories, that we actually have some real stories from people, and they can tell different perspectives, and it captures, their stories capture a wider range, a different type of story that may not be told or may not be tapped on the shoulder to present. And Abby, she opened the door for me and Leticia to do our first boom, and she kept it open for Ella, and there's some other folks, Ella and Michelle and Tori, and there have been other folks who were able to come on and do their boom. So there's that's the type of work that needs to happen, and all of us need to be able to uplift others. There's a bunch of folks who are just like us, who are, Tori, you talked about the imposter syndrome, who are fighting this imposter syndrome, and they just need someone to kind of push them and know that that push isn't going to kill you, but actually make you stronger. So it's important that we keep doing this.
You just made me feel old right there when you said that.
Absolutely. We got to get access to these videos though, because if that stuff is sitting in the cooler, it ain't no good. So we got to get this stuff out some way, somehow. It's all about amplification. So hopefully Q will find a way in which these stories can, people need to hear it. And, it's kind of like preaching to the choir. If we just keep it contained all in one space and the world doesn't hear the magic and the power, then they only get, like Brian said, this little snapshot here, and still it hasn't been unpacked. So hopefully we'll find a way in which these stories can be told, shared, and they reach the corners and the ends of the earth.
Yeah, we got you, Ella. I saw that question in there. Yeah, we have several ways to amplify those stories, and first we'll walk with Q Boone on making sure that, first of all, we have to make sure that they're on the rights to it, since you actually presented it at their conference with their video. So we'll work on that particular piece. Don't worry, we got you. We're gonna get these stories out there. I promise.
Yes.
I promise. Go ahead. Who was that? No, maybe
Missed
that's
it.
the tools kids in the
We
background.
missed it. We missed it.
All right. Well, cool. I know we've been on here for a while. I really have enjoyed you guys. Thank you, first of all, for taking the time out to come on here and share what you talked about with Q Boom, but I'll elaborating a little bit about your stories. I'm exciting to see what's next for you. So I'm going to give you that opportunity. Tell us what's next with you individually. What you've got going on after Q, so we can actually make sure we follow and amplify that as well. We'll start with you, Ella. I know. I like doing that. I love people's faces when I do that.
Okay, so the question was, what's after this? It's whatever Tatul tells me. Seriously, it's whatever Tatul tells me. That's where I end up. He'll be like, "Yo, Leticia and I have shared stories." Like he'll send me a link. I'm like, "Okay, all right, yeah, throw me in, coach. Throw me in."
Throw me in, coach. All right. What about you, Abby? What you got going on next?
Not a lot, because Leticia is in my face with this PhD program that I have to go apply for. So that's going to be my life for a little bit.
Whoa. I don't know what to say to that.
Doctors up in here? That's what I'm talking about. What?
Cool. Well, good luck with that. That's a beast, So, definitely be praying for you on that end. What about you, Tori?
I mean, I think I'm about to go full in on this research with this imposter syndrome and this mental health thing and try to, I don't know. I mean, I got some big ideas. I mean, Leticia and Tatul know that I am just big idea guy. I'm constantly thinking of, what's the next big thing, the next day. So I don't know. I kind of thought about doing, a whole session series, on this topic and just really getting out there. So that's the plan right now. If, I don't have anything else that pops up for me. And I also am looking at the PhD program. So I'm trying to get this doctor status as well, be like the tool. So
you want to put that on the pod, let me know. I got you.
Thank you.
All right, Michelle, what about you?
It's funny. I was listening to Ella and she said, whatever Tatul says. He is our personal bully. Legit. I just sat here and thought about, he had me doing some kind of session for somebody. Who was that, Tatul? Was that Q? Who was
that was
it?
ours.
LA?
That was Equatorium. That was ours. That was our thing. You
was
killed
that what it was?
though. You
I
killed
was
it though.
All right. I mean, but you're not gonna keep bullying me, is what I'm saying.
You killed it.
He will continue to bully me, so I don't really know what's up. I'm just trying to really. I'm on my second year in K-12, and it has been amazing. And I'm just trying to be the best Black female educator you guys have ever seen this side of whatever, because I love it, and I love the influence and the impact. I didn't even realize how real it was until seeing my kids this second year, because I looped with my babies, and just seeing the impact. So I'm putting it all in the classroom. That's what I'm doing right now, and just trying to educate my colleagues whenever I can, without losing my job and whatnot. But my folks love me. I don't think I'm gonna lose my job, because they love me and they support me, and I know I'm aligned properly, if that makes sense, with what they want. So that's where I am until Tatul send me another message and be like, "Yeah, this is what I said," and I'm be like, "Okay."
Are you on Twitter?
Me? Yes.
Yes.
Yeah. I'm on Twitter.
What is your Twitter handle?
At Michelle Newell. Just my name. I'll drop it in the chat.
Just my name. Okay, sorry. Once again, I told you I'm in that mood. And I would ask Leticia the same question, but I know whatever the next conference is, that's where she'll be.
I'm actually on spring break. I started today, so I will be disconnecting next week. Nice. So I have one more session tomorrow, and then you won't see or hear from me at all next week. Because you're right. Then in April, I have a couple coming up. So, but I'm taking a break. I'm much needed.
Just let y'all in on the inside story. I thought she lived here in Texas, because I was always seeing her at Texas conferences. And when we met up in Minnesota for a conference together, we just had this discussion, and I was like, wait a minute, you're not from Texas? You live in California?
Yeah, I was actually waiting to hear from Beverly Hills about my job. And he was like, wait a minute, Beverly Hills, you're not in Texas? I'm like, no. It was great.
She makes her way around for sure. Any parting shots, Valerie, Tatul?
I thank you so much for everyone jumping on. I think it's just so important that all of us kind of pay it forward, and however we can amplify each other's voices, because people aren't going to do it for us. Like, they're not going to sit there and say, oh, you should look at Tori or Michelle or Ella or Leticia or Abby or Valerie or Brian, right? They're not going to say it. So if they're not going to say it, I feel like I have the responsibility to uplift these voices, because, we need 100 of you. Everyone on this screen, we need 100 of you if we're going to make any dent in this education space. So I'm just excited that y'all don't like bite my head off when I throw something crazy at you. Y'all always like, all right, let's do it. So I'm just grateful, and I'm grateful to be in this journey with you, because this network is so important, and this network is what's really gonna move us all forward. So just grateful to be in your guys' presence.
I would say just keep it going. At the end of the day, whatever it is that we want to see, it is our responsibility to make it happen. At the end of the day, we're not begging, we're not taking anybody's breadcrumbs. Don't pity party on us. We are the dream. And because we are the dream, we have to make sure that it's actualized. And at the end of the day, this is a prime example. We didn't even orchestrate it in this manner, but just looking at these boxes and how they connected, whether we knew each other, but by some degree, we all connected in some way and said, I recognize someone else. I recognize someone else. And that's what we need to continue to do. And Leticia said in the chat that we're doing it ourselves. So they don't invite us to the table. Hey, we all got tools, and we're going to build that doggone table, and we seated at it. And we're going to invite our folks to it. And that's just how it goes down, and continue to do the work. So congratulations to you all.
Yeah, and we're not going to stop at the table. We're going to build this whole doggone house. Ladies and gentlemen, we thank you for joining us on the After the Bell series for Q21. We love you, and we catch you at the next conference. We out.